I remember in 2015, everyone was asking the most important question ever. Is the dress black and blue or is the dress white and gold? This had to be answered. I think I saw as black and blue, but it kind of always switched up on me. Kira, do you know about the dress?
Dude, I have literally no idea when people are talking about like the gold and white. It was always black and
I
blue.
I know, I've always seen it black and blue, and it's been over 10 years now where people still have these conversations over what they see it as. So many people would have these arguments over of what color this dress is. And I mean, people still talk about it mainly for engagement bait, and of course, the internet would turn their gaze onto the person who shared this. And of course, they had the answer. The dress is actually black and blue. It's basically color theory. It's the way our brains work. Some people will their brains will take in assumptions based on context clues like lighting. If you think the photo is taken during night or day, it'll kind of change your brain. Because I mean, sometimes you can look at the dress, it'll change colors. It's basically the way our brain gaslights us. But where did this whole thing originate from? The dress was a picture sent to Grace and Keir Johnson. So Grace and Keir Johnson were getting married. They were this Scottish couple, and Grace's mom had actually sent a photo of the dress because she couldn't tell what color the dress was and she needed some questions on it. So Grace would see it as white and gold, and Keir actually saw it as black and blue, and they were kind of arguing over it. They actually shared this on Facebook. It kind of got popular in their little area, but where it would really pop off is from their friend Caitlin. At their wedding, Caitlin had seen the dress and snapped a photo and shared it on her Tumblr blog, which has now been deleted. But at first, the post wasn't really viral, but then it would have around 5,000 notes, which is equivalent to likes and reposts and stuff like that on Tumblr. Caitlin actually did not expect this post to go viral, but overnight it would become a sensation. And of course, BuzzFeed would get a hold of this because it's 2015. BuzzFeed is everywhere. And people were calling this hashtag Dressgate. Everyone was going in on it. Celebrities were. But of course, this is 2015. So who do you think needs to be a hold of this? Ellen DeGeneres, of course. Anytime had any viral moment, Ellen DeGeneres was at the scene of the crime. So she would actually have the couple on her show, and they just seemed like this cute, loving Scottish couple who got married, and it was just like really cute. And Ellen would gift them a honeymoon trip and $10,000, and that was that. And then as the story goes on, people still share the photo. But the story doesn't really end there because I always see this post pop up every so often, but no one really talks about the dark side of it and how Grace was almost murdered by her husband Keir outside of their home in March of 2022. And today we're going to discuss what happened. Hi, welcome to the Decomposing Flower podcast. I'm your host, Jen. With me is Kira. In this podcast, we talk about all sorts of things that we find interesting or true crime adjacent. And so all of our information is found online and it's just shared for educational purposes. We also have a Google form if you have a topic you would like us to talk about. But enough with that, let's kind of talk a little bit about Grace. So there isn't a whole lot about Grace when I was trying to do my research. I usually like to talk about the victim more so than the perpetrator, but we don't really have a whole lot of information on Grace and even Keir. From what I know, Grace and Keir Johnson, they were a couple from Scotland. They always had, unfortunately, a really abusive relationship that didn't stop when they got married. Keir basically made Grace feel trapped in their Scottish home. They actually lived on a pretty small Scottish isle called Colonsay. I don't know how to say it. I'm so sorry to any Scottish listeners. From what I know and my research, it's really isolated and there's really not a whole lot going on there. Even Grace would say that she felt trapped because there wasn't really any permanent police presence. So you can imagine it wasn't the easiest for Grace to even get out. Keir would control Grace in every single way possible. She was isolated from her friends, her family. He was controlling how much money she had access to. and always he was just very abusive physically and emotionally. He would text her bullshit like, "You should support me, but you don't," which is such a fucking abuser thing to say, where they're just like, "Oh my god, even though I control every aspect of my life, you don't support me? How dare you?" But from what it seemed, the location was very isolated, and from people who have lived there, they say, like, people that live there are just people that are usually born there, and it's kind of like a nothing, like, it's very beautiful, but there's just not a whole lot going on there, and of course, this was almost like an abusive paradise for Kier because he had all this control and isolation over Grace. So, on March 6th, 2022, Kier had been drinking all night at a pub. When he got home, he began to be an abusive asshole and he began to yell at Grace because she did the worst thing possible. She went to a job interview. How dare she? And this pissed Kier off, probably because he wanted to have her completely rely on him. So he started to argue with Grace and he threatened to leave her in the morning. From some sources, it said that Grace went outside of their cottage, and then others were saying that he got up and he was leaving, and that Grace got up and she was trying to stop him. But whatever happened, Kier snapped. He would push Grace to the ground. He would use his legs to pin her arms down, and she wasn't able to move. He had began to take his arms and his hands and he started to strangle her for 20 seconds. She was trying really hard to fight him off. She was screaming, she was terrified. She believed this was it, that she was going to die, that he was going to kill her. Typically, people can actually pass out after 30 seconds, and Grace did say that she was losing consciousness, but luckily her screams were heard by a witness, and this witness was able to shove Kier off where he would go back inside. At first, when I heard about the witness, I thought it was going to be like an adult. Apparently, it was a minor. Now, I don't know how old they were. I'm assuming a teenager because they would have been able to get him off of her, but I don't know. What's crazy is that he was doing this in daylight because obviously, if an abuser is doing shit in public, they're doing worse behind doors. But Kier had went back into the house, which maybe it was to cool off, but when he came back, he had a knife and he said someone is going to die here before he began to choke Grace again. The police were called, and I believe Grace was the one who was calling. So I don't know if he tried choking her again and the witness got him off or if she got him off, but she was able to call the police and he started to self harm. I don't know why, probably to make Grace feel guilty or try to blame her. But luckily, the police were called and they were actually able to arrive. And when they came, they found Kier under his desk holding a knife to his neck, but the police were able to remove it safely from him. So he was arrested. He would plead guilty in June of 2024 for attempted murder. And originally, he was sentenced to only 5 years. But because he pled guilty, he only got 4.5, which is nothing. I mean, he literally tried to kill his fucking wife. He was also banned from speaking to Grace or being near Grace for 10 years. His own lawyer was trying to lower his sentence, saying that he's trying to get help. He's doing better, but the judge didn't listen and actually went on to say that Grace feared for her life. So his sentence was fitting for what he got, even though personally for me, I think he should have been locked away forever. But Grace would go on to say in her own victim impact statement that she struggled to understand how he had no remorse for what he did. She struggled in every kind of way, physically, emotionally, and even financially. I mean, this was something that Grace was dealing with for over 11 years. And I honestly hope that Grace has been able to heal, whether that's through therapy or her friends or her family. Obviously, this isn't something that you just go to therapy for and then you're done, but I just hope that she's been able to get through this. But when I was doing my research, one thing that showed up that was really eerie is that during the whole hashtag Dressgate in 2015, there was a quote by the Salvation Army in Africa that actually used the dress as a slogan for abuse, where they said, "Why is it so hard to see black and blue?" This is such an eerie quote to me because, while everyone is sitting there making jokes and laughing about the dress, there was Grace being abused. And it's just, this is so accurate for abuse victims is so many times, like the dress where we all thought it was white and gold, abuse victims are being abused and we don't see it. And it's just so eerie to me. And it only took her husband to try and kill her for her to be able to get out of this situation, which is so sad because unfortunately she could have ended up as another murder victim like multiple people we have in our cases. It's just so sad, and unfortunately, it's hard for abuse victims to come forward about their abuse because a lot of times they end up just killed, like I said. And I just honestly, I really hope that Grace is doing better, and I hope that she has been able to put this behind her in some kind of way. And I hope that I explained with as much empathy and care as I could. I know there's not a whole lot of information, but that's where we're at with this episode. So, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you guys in our next week. Bye.